metallic taste hit my tongue first, sharp, like sucking on pennies. I'd been halfway through my morning coffee when every fluorescent fixture on the 14th floor of the Meridian Tower exploded in perfect unison. Not sparked, not flickered, exploded. Glass shards rained down like deadly snow, and the air filled with that distinctive ozone crackle that makes your skin crawl. I dropped behind my desk as phosphor dust settled on everything in an eerie blue-white coating, the emergency lighting casting long shadows through the haze. My name is Orlin Vasquez, and I'm a Level 3 Electrical Safety Inspector for the city's Emergency Management Division. 23 years on the job, and I'd never seen anything like this. The synchronization was impossible. Ballasts don't fail simultaneously unless something forces them to. The timing was too precise, too coordinated. I pulled out my digital multimeter and tablet, muscle memory taking over even as my hands shook. The readings made no sense. Voltage spikes across multiple circuits, but not random ones. They followed a pattern, like ripples in a pond, emanating from the building's central electrical core. Jesus Christ, Orlin. I looked up to see my reflection in the cracked window, covered in white phosphor dust, looking like a ghost, and realized Jorik was shouting at me through the emergency intercom. Jorik Henley, my supervisor at emergency response, always sounded like he'd swallowed gravel, but today there was something else in his voice. Fear. Orlin, get out of there now. We're tracking multiple incidents across 6 buildings in the downtown commercial district. Emergency teams are being deployed, but this pattern is spreading. 6 buildings in one district? My stomach dropped. I grabbed my emergency kit and the portable spectrum analyzer I always carried, standard equipment for electrical hazard assessment. The readings on my tablet showed the electrical signature was still active, still building toward some unknown threshold. Whatever triggered the first synchronized detonation was cycling up for another wave. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. 3 months ago, I'd filed Safety Violation Report SVR 2847 regarding defective ballast systems in the newly installed Mercury-class fluorescent fixtures. The report specifically warned about harmonic resonance cascade failure if multiple units shared synchronized frequency modulation across building electrical grids. Corporate risk assessment had marked it deferred pending cost-benefit analysis, bureaucratic speak for too expensive to fix. I'd been right. The synchronization pattern wasn't equipment failure. It was exactly the cascade resonance I'd predicted. My tablet chimed with an encrypted message. Mareth Koss, my former colleague from my days at Helix Environmental Safety Consulting, before I transferred to municipal emergency management. She'd taught me that accurate data mattered more than convenient conclusions, even when standing up to corporate pressure cost her career advancement. Orlin, emergency frequency analysis confirms cascade resonance pattern. Matches suppressed incident data from Riverside Shopping Complex, October 2023. Same electrical contractor, same Mercury-class installations, same ignored engineering warnings. This is systematic equipment failure, not isolated incidents. The Riverside Shopping Complex incident. 8 people hospitalized for acute mercury vapor poisoning, dozens more treated for phosphor dust inhalation. Official cause: isolated equipment malfunction due to manufacturing defect. Insurance settlement sealed, investigation files classified as proprietary corporate data. But Mareth had kept encrypted copies of the electrical analysis, evidence that the malfunction was actually predictable cascade failure. I started toward the emergency stairwell, but froze when I heard the building's main electrical distribution system beginning to hum, a low, resonant frequency that pulsed through the steel framework like a massive tuning fork. The backup emergency lighting began flickering in synchronized rhythm, like a giant electronic heartbeat counting down to system failure. The second cascade wave was building toward critical resonance frequency. I had 2 choices: follow emergency evacuation protocol and preserve my own safety, or stay long enough to document the exact harmonic patterns that could prove this was predictable system failure rather than random accident. Lives across the city depended on understanding the technical cause, but remaining meant risking mercury poisoning and potential structural collapse if the electrical cascade escalated. The metallic taste was intensifying, mercury vapor concentration increasing in the air. Static electricity made my skin crawl, and the distinctive smell of ionized oxygen meant electrical arcing was building toward discharge levels again. The remaining fluorescent tubes in their ceiling housings were beginning to vibrate audibly, resonating like struck tuning forks. I made my choice, and it was the wrong one. Instead of evacuating, I activated my spectrum analyzer and began recording the harmonic frequency buildup. If this was corporate negligence disguised as equipment failure, the electrical signature data would be crucial evidence. Emergency response could handle building evacuation, but only someone with my technical background could document the resonance patterns, proving this was preventable system cascade rather than unforeseeable accident. But I was thinking like an engineer, not a survivor. The harmonic resonance climbed toward critical frequency. Electrical potential was building toward the same discharge levels that had caused the first synchronized explosion, and I was standing directly beneath damaged fixtures, recording data while fragments of shattered glass still covered the floor around me. My hands trembled as I worked, making it difficult to maintain steady readings. The spectrum analyzer showed resonance building across multiple frequency bands simultaneously, exactly the cascade pattern I had predicted in SVR 2847. This wasn't random equipment failure. This was systematic vulnerability in the Mercury-class electrical design, triggered by building power grid fluctuations. The emergency intercom crackled with increasing urgency. Orlin, mandatory evacuation in progress. Emergency response teams are 60 seconds from your building, but critical electrical failure is imminent. You need to evacuate immediately. I stared at the spectrum analyzer display. 45 more seconds of frequency data could provide definitive proof of the cascade mechanism. But the electrical signature was spiking toward the exact resonance levels that had triggered the first explosion. 45 seconds that could mean the difference between proving corporate liability and watching more people die in preventable accidents. Or 45 seconds that could cost me my life. The phosphor dust coating my skin was beginning to burn, chemical irritation from prolonged exposure to mercury compounds. Copper taste flooded my mouth as metallic vapor concentration reached toxic levels in the confined space. Every survival instinct demanded immediate evacuation. But if I didn't capture this frequency data, the next cascade wave could hit elementary schools, nursing homes, hospitals, anywhere in the city where Mercury-class systems had been installed to replace older, safer fluorescent technology. 30 seconds remaining before critical resonance. The ceiling-mounted fluorescent housings began rattling violently in their support brackets. Harmonic vibration was approaching the frequency threshold for secondary cascade failure, potentially triggering every remaining fixture in the building to detonate simultaneously. 20 seconds. I stayed, kept recording, even as the building's entire electrical distribution system prepared to tear itself apart around me. Even as I realized my obsession with being right about the engineering might have just condemned me to die proving it. The second wave hit while I was still recording. Every remaining fluorescent fixture in the Meridian Tower detonated simultaneously at exactly 9:47 a.m. The harmonic cascade I'd documented ripped through the building's electrical grid with surgical precision, 43 fixtures across 6 floors exploding in perfect synchronization. The blast wave knocked me backward, spectrum analyzer flying from my hands as I hit the wall. Glass fragments peppered the corridor around me. The emergency stairwell door was 15 feet away, might as well have been 15 miles. I crawled through phosphor dust and mercury vapor toward the exit as the building's electrical system began its death spiral. Mercury vapor concentration spiked as damaged fixtures released their chemical payload. I found my spectrum analyzer 20 feet down the hallway, its case cracked but data intact. The frequency signature was unmistakable, exactly the harmonic cascade pattern I'd predicted in Safety Violation Report SVR 2847. But capturing proof meant nothing if I died from mercury poisoning before I could share it. The emergency stairwell was packed with evacuees, office workers coughing from mercury exposure, security guards helping injured civilians, someone vomiting phosphor dust. I joined the stream moving toward the basement emergency command center, following established protocol for electrical hazard incidents. 3 flights down through smoke and chemical vapor. The metallic taste intensified with each breath, toxic mercury accumulating in my bloodstream. My hands trembled, whether from adrenaline or heavy metal poisoning, I couldn't tell. My tablet showed the disaster expanding. Hartwell Medical Plaza across the street had just lost power completely. The cascade was jumping between buildings through shared electrical infrastructure, exactly what I'd warned about in my buried safety report. Downtown Emergency Response had established a temporary command center in Meridian Tower's basement electrical room. When I stumbled through the reinforced door, Jorik was coordinating responses to 7 simultaneous incidents across the commercial district. The basement emergency command center was chaos. Jorik had converted the building's electrical maintenance room into a temporary crisis management hub, with emergency communications equipment spread across tables between circuit breaker panels and voltage monitoring systems. 3 emergency response technicians worked frantically at radio consoles, coordinating evacuation teams across the downtown district. Orlen! Jorik's voice cut through radio chatter. Christ, you look like hell. Mercury exposure? I nodded, pulling the cracked spectrum analyzer from my emergency kit. This isn't equipment failure, Jorik. It's systematic cascade resonance in mercury-class fluorescent systems. I've got proof. Proof? Jorik grabbed my arm. We've got 12 people hospitalized for mercury poisoning, structural fires spreading, and you're worried about being right? Your job is safety assessment, not playing detective. My safety assessment 3 months ago predicted this exact scenario. I held up the spectrum analyzer display. Safety violation report SVR, 2847. Corporate deferred it as too expensive to fix. One of the communications technicians interrupted us. Commander Henley, electrical anomalies detected at Riverside Municipal Complex. Same frequency pattern as downtown incidents. Riverside Municipal Complex. Elementary school, administrative offices, public health clinic. 3,000 people, including 500 children. The most vulnerable population for mercury vapor exposure. I grabbed Jorik's shoulder, mercury tremors making my grip unsteady. Based on the cascade progression, Riverside has 15 minutes before synchronized detonation. Maybe less. 15 minutes for full evacuation? Jorik stared at the communications display. Impossible. We need 30 minutes minimum for school evacuation protocols. Then cut power manually before cascade resonance reaches critical frequency, I said. Kill the electrical grid, stop the harmonic buildup. Manual shutdown means cutting life support at the medical clinic. Ventilators, cardiac monitors, people die immediately instead of potentially. The radio crackled. Command, ER7 at Riverside Complex detecting electrical anomalies. Harmonic resonance building. Requesting immediate guidance. Jorik looked at me, then at the communications console. Command decision time. Choose between definite harm through power cuts versus potential catastrophe through inaction. Are you certain about this frequency analysis, Orlen? Because if you're wrong, I'm killing people based on your mercury-addled calculations. Mercury-addled. The accusation hit home because it might be true. Heavy metal exposure was affecting my cognitive processing, making me second-guess calculations that should be straightforward. What if the cascade timing was different at Riverside? What if their electrical grid configuration changed the harmonic propagation? I'm confident about the pattern, I admitted. But exact timing depends on variables I can't measure remotely. Electrical load, grid stability, electromagnetic interference. Could be 10 minutes, could be 25. Not good enough. Jorik keyed the radio. ER7, initiate evacuation protocols at Riverside Complex. Priority to elementary school and critical care patients. Manual shutdown only if evacuation fails. But evacuation wouldn't work. Not with 3,000 people, including bedridden patients and confused children. The synchronized detonations would occur, while hundreds remained trapped in mercury-filled corridors. My tablet chimed with an encrypted message from Mareth. Orlen, cascade pattern correlates with suppressed helix environmental data. Same contractor installed mercury-class systems citywide. This isn't isolated downtown. It's spreading through municipal power grid. Every connected building is vulnerable. Citywide. The cascade was propagating through shared electrical infrastructure, triggering harmonic resonance in every mercury-class installation across the city's power distribution network. Jorik, we need Sable Morrison from Municipal Facilities Management. She has the comprehensive installation database, every mercury-class location, electrical grid connections, installation density patterns. Jorik's expression darkened. Morrison? She approved these installations and has been dodging our calls since 9 a.m. Corporate damage control, probably consulting lawyers. Emergency transmissions erupted from multiple response teams. The harmonic cascade was accelerating. Simultaneous detonations at Morrison Plaza, West Side Shopping Center, Pine Ridge Apartments. Anywhere mercury-class systems had replaced older fluorescent technology. We're losing control, Jorik muttered, watching emergency response markers multiply across the city map. Each wave triggers more locations, faster than we can track or evacuate. I stared at the expanding pattern of electrical failures, understanding finally that this wasn't building-by-building equipment malfunction. The Mercury-class installations were integrated municipal infrastructure, a citywide lighting upgrade connected through shared power distribution networks that allowed harmonic resonance to propagate like a contagion. Corporate efficiency disguised as technological improvement, and we were running out of time to contain it. The third wave hit at 10:23 a.m., while Jorik was still arguing with Municipal Emergency Command about resource allocation. Every Mercury-class fixture in the Riverside complex detonated in perfect synchronization. The elementary school, administrative offices, and public health clinic erupting simultaneously in a cascade of glass and chemical vapor. Through the basement windows, I watched the distant buildings flicker with electrical fire as their lighting systems died in coordinated destruction. "Jesus Christ," one of the communications technicians whispered, staring at his console as emergency frequencies exploded with casualty reports. Riverside evacuation was only 70% complete. The metallic taste in my mouth intensified, mercury vapor concentration building in the basement as damaged ventilation systems pulled contaminated air through the building's circulation network. My hands were shaking worse now, whether from heavy metal poisoning or the realization that hundreds of children had been trapped in those buildings when the cascade triggered. I grabbed my tablet, pulling up the spectrum analysis data I'd recorded during the first two waves. The frequency progression was identical across all three incidents: exponential harmonic buildup followed by synchronized resonance cascade at exactly the same critical frequency. This wasn't random equipment failure. This was systematic vulnerability engineered into every Mercury-class fluorescent installation in the city. "Jorik, look at this data," I said, showing him the spectrum analyzer readings. The harmonic cascade frequency is identical at all three locations. Same resonance pattern, same critical trigger point, same synchronized detonation timing. This is systematic vulnerability, not isolated equipment failure. Jorik barely glanced at the display. "I don't give a damn about technical analysis right now, Orlin. We've got mass casualty incidents at 3 separate locations, emergency medical is overwhelmed, and I've got municipal command breathing down my neck demanding explanations I don't have." Before I could respond, my tablet chimed with an encrypted message from Mareth. The attachment contained a compressed file labeled MFM Internal Communications, Classification Level 3. I opened the file, scanning through technical memoranda and safety assessment reports. My blood pressure spiked as I read the contents. Municipal Facilities Management had known about harmonic resonance vulnerability in Mercury-class fluorescent systems for 18 months. Internal testing had identified the exact critical frequency that could trigger synchronized detonation cascades across connected electrical grids. And they'd installed them anyway. "Jorik, you need to see this." I shoved the tablet toward him, highlighting the most damning document, a risk assessment memo from Sable Morrison to MFM Executive Director Marcus Webb, dated 14 months ago. The memo was clinical in its assessment of systematic vulnerability. Mercury-class fluorescent installations demonstrate harmonic resonance cascade potential when exposed to specific electromagnetic frequency ranges. Synchronized detonation events possible across connected electrical distribution networks. Estimated casualty potential, 200 to 500 per incident, depending on building occupancy and evacuation response time. Recommended mitigation: postpone citywide installation pending additional safety testing. Alternative recommendation: proceed with installation. Implement comprehensive insurance coverage for potential liability exposure. Jorik read the memo twice, his expression shifting from exhaustion to rage. They knew. The bastards knew this could happen and installed the systems anyway. "It gets worse," I said, scrolling to additional documents. "Look at the installation priority list. They targeted high-occupancy buildings first: schools, hospitals, office complexes, shopping centers. Maximum casualty potential disguised as energy efficiency improvements." The communications console erupted with emergency transmission from Emergency Response Team 12. "Command, this is YAR 12 at East Side Shopping District. We're detecting electrical resonance buildup consistent with cascade pattern. Requesting immediate technical guidance. Estimated 2,000 civilians in affected area." 2,000 people. The East Side Shopping District was the largest commercial complex in the city, with Mercury-class installations throughout 5 interconnected buildings. If the harmonic cascade triggered there during peak shopping hours, the casualty count would dwarf everything we'd experienced so far. "How long do we have?" Jorik asked, grabbing the radio handset. I pulled up the frequency analysis software, inputting electrical grid data for the East Side complex. The harmonic resonance curve was already building toward critical threshold, accelerated by electrical fluctuations from the previous cascade events. Maybe 12 minutes before synchronized detonation. 15 minutes maximum. YAR 12, initiate immediate full evacuation of East Side Shopping District. Priority to disabled and elderly shoppers. We'll attempt manual electrical shutdown if evacuation timeline extends beyond safe parameters. But I knew 12 minutes wasn't enough time to evacuate 2,000 people from a complex designed for consumer retention, not emergency egress. The shopping district's electrical system was integrated across all 5 buildings. Cutting power to prevent cascade detonation would trap hundreds of people in darkened corridors and disabled elevators. My tablet chimed with another message from Mareth. Orlin, found more in the archived files. Corporate insurance policy specifically covers systematic equipment failure resulting in mass casualty events. Policy purchased 3 weeks before first Mercury-class installations. Someone wanted this to happen. Insurance fraud. Municipal Facilities Management had engineered systematic vulnerability into the city's electrical infrastructure, then purchased insurance coverage specifically designed to profit from the resulting casualties. The synchronized detonations weren't accidents or terrorist attacks. They were deliberate corporate murder disguised as technological failure. "Jorik, we need to contact Sable Morrison immediately," I said. "She has the technical specifications for disrupting harmonic resonance propagation. If we can modify the electrical grid frequency distribution, we might be able to prevent cascade buildup in remaining Mercury-class installations." Sable Morrison is the one who approved these installations in the first place. Jorik slammed his fist against the communications console. "You want me to trust the technical guidance of someone who's directly responsible for mass casualties? She's the only person with access to the complete installation database and electrical grid integration specifications. Without her cooperation, we're responding to cascade events reactively instead of preventing them systematically." The radio crackled with urgent transmission from YAR 12. "Command, evacuation at East Side Shopping District is proceeding slowly. Electrical resonance is building toward critical levels. We need technical intervention now, or we're looking at massive casualties." Jorik stared at the communications display, watching emergency response markers spread across the city map like a contagion. Each red marker represented a potential cascade site: schools, hospitals, office buildings, residential complexes. Anywhere Mercury-class fluorescent systems had been installed as part of the municipal energy efficiency program. "Get me Sable Morrison on emergency frequency," he ordered the communications technician. "If she's screening calls, route through municipal command override protocols." While the technician worked to establish contact, I analyzed the cascade propagation pattern across the city's electrical grid. The harmonic resonance was spreading through interconnected distribution networks, building towards simultaneous critical frequency at multiple locations. We were approaching a convergence point where dozens of installations could detonate simultaneously, creating citywide infrastructure collapse. The communications console speaker crackled with static, then Sable Morrison's voice came through with corporate-trained calm. "This is Sable Morrison, Municipal Facilities Management. I understand there's been some electrical equipment difficulties downtown." "Equipment difficulties?" Jorik's voice was barely controlled fury. "We've got mass casualties at 3 locations, 2,000 people at risk in East Side Shopping District, and cascade resonance building towards citywide infrastructure failure. Your Mercury-class installations are systematically murdering civilians." "I appreciate the emergency response concern," Sable replied with bureaucratic smoothness. "However, Mercury-class fluorescent systems meet all municipal safety standards and have been installed according to manufacturer specifications. Any equipment malfunction would be covered under our comprehensive insurance policies." I grabbed the radio handset from Jorik. "Sable, this is Orlin Voss, Electrical Safety Inspector. I've got documented proof that MFM knew about harmonic resonance vulnerability 18 months ago. Internal memos show you recommended postponing installation pending safety testing. People are dying because corporate profits took priority over public safety. Silence on the radio for nearly 10 seconds. When Sable's voice returned, the corporate polish was gone, replaced by something raw and frightened. Orlin, how did you get access to internal MFM communications? That doesn't matter right now. What matters is stopping the cascade propagation before it kills hundreds more people. I need the technical specifications for disrupting harmonic resonance in Mercury-class systems, frequency modulation parameters, electrical grid isolation procedures, anything that can prevent synchronized detonation. I can't, Sable's voice broke. If I provide technical intervention data, it's admission of corporate liability. MFM Legal has strict protocols about emergency response cooperation. Corporate liability? I stared at the radio handset in disbelief. We're talking about preventing mass casualties, not protecting stock prices. The communications console erupted with simultaneous emergency transmissions from multiple response teams. Electrical resonance was building toward critical levels at 7 additional locations across the city, all Mercury-class installations, all approaching synchronized cascade detonation within the next 20 minutes. Jorek grabbed the radio handset from me. Morrison, this is Emergency Response Commander Henley. I'm invoking Municipal Emergency Authority Protocol 7. You are hereby required to provide all technical information necessary to prevent imminent threat to public safety. Failure to comply constitutes criminal negligence and obstruction of emergency response. Another long pause. When Sable spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. The cascade can be disrupted by modifying electrical grid frequency distribution to prevent harmonic resonance buildup. But it requires manual shutdown of the primary municipal power distribution center, followed by systematic frequency modulation across secondary grid networks. How long would that take? Jorek asked. Complete citywide electrical shutdown and frequency modulation, maybe 45 minutes with full technical crew. But it would cut power to hospitals, emergency services, traffic control systems, everything dependent on municipal electrical distribution. 45 minutes of citywide blackout. Hospitals on emergency power, traffic signals dead, emergency communications compromised, life support systems dependent on backup generators. The cure might cause more casualties than the disease, especially if backup power systems failed during the extended outage. But without systematic intervention, the harmonic cascade would trigger synchronized detonations at dozens of locations simultaneously, creating chemical vapor clouds and structural fires across the entire city. Mass casualties in the thousands, with emergency response systems completely overwhelmed. I looked at Jorek's exhausted expression, then at the emergency response map showing cascade sites spreading like cancer through the city's infrastructure. We were facing the choice between definite harm through power grid shutdown versus potential catastrophe through systematic cascade failure. And we had maybe 15 minutes to decide before the convergence point made the choice for us. The radio crackled with Sable's voice, now urgent and frightened. There's something else you need to know. The insurance policy doesn't just cover equipment failure casualties. It includes specific provisions for systematic infrastructure collapse resulting from coordinated emergency response actions. Someone planned for every scenario we might choose. Corporate conspiracy beyond simple equipment failure. They hadn't just engineered the cascade vulnerability. They'd anticipated our response options and structured their insurance policies to profit from whatever choices we made. Who? I asked. Who at MFM has access to that level of policy planning? Executive Director Marcus Webb, Sable whispered. He coordinated the Mercury-class installations personally, overriding safety recommendations and rushing municipal approval through political connections. The insurance policies were his idea. Marcus Webb. I remembered the name from municipal safety committee meetings. Corporate executive with connections throughout city government. Advocate for rapid infrastructure modernization projects that prioritized cost savings over safety testing. If Webb had orchestrated systematic vulnerability for insurance fraud, then every cascade detonation was premeditated murder disguised as technological advancement. The communications console exploded with emergency transmission from ER-12. Command, electrical resonance at East Side Shopping District has reached critical threshold. Synchronized detonation imminent. We need immediate technical intervention or evacuation completion. I grabbed the spectrum analyzer, watching the harmonic frequency curve spike toward cascade trigger point. We were out of time for systematic solutions. Either we shut down the municipal power grid immediately, accepting the casualties from hospital blackouts and traffic system failures, or we watched 2,000 people die in synchronized chemical explosions. Jorik, make the call, I said. Grid shutdown or mass casualties. Those are our only options. He stared at the emergency response display, understanding finally that every choice led to people dying. The only question was how many, and whether their deaths would be accidental consequences or deliberate corporate murder. The radio crackled with Sable's voice, now desperate. I can guide you through emergency grid shutdown procedures, but you need to understand, Marcus Webb anticipated this situation. The insurance policies are structured to maximize payouts regardless of our response choices. Whether we shut down the grid or let the cascades continue, he profits either way. Corporate murder disguised as infrastructure failure, with insurance fraud as the profit mechanism. Every cascade detonation was premeditated, every casualty was revenue, and every emergency response decision had been anticipated and monetized by people who viewed human lives as acceptable business expenses. We were fighting a war we'd already lost, against an enemy who'd written the rules to guarantee their victory regardless of our tactical choices. But we had to try, because the alternative was letting them murder an entire city for insurance money. The fourth wave struck at 11:47 a.m., not while we were arguing, but during the 3-minute silence after Jorik had made his impossible choice. I watched through the basement security monitors as the East Side shopping district erupted in perfect synchronization, 5 interconnected buildings flashing white-hot as every Mercury-class fixture detonated simultaneously. The chemical vapor cloud that billowed from the shattered windows was thick enough to block out the morning sun, casting the entire commercial district into poisonous twilight. Jesus, the communications technician started, then doubled over coughing as mercury-contaminated air cycled through our basement ventilation system. The metallic taste coating my tongue intensified, each breath burning my throat with chemical fire. 2,000 people. The evacuation teams had managed maybe 60% completion when the cascade triggered. That left 800 civilians trapped in darkened buildings filling with toxic vapor and glass debris. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I pulled up the emergency response display. Red markers spread across the city map like infection. 17 separate cascade sites now showing electrical resonance buildup toward critical threshold. Hospital districts, residential complexes, the municipal airport. Every Mercury-class installation MFM had rushed through approval was approaching synchronized detonation within the next 30 minutes. Orlin, I need technical options now. Jorik's voice cracked with exhaustion and barely controlled panic. ER teams are reporting cascade buildup at Memorial Hospital, Westside Elementary, and the Municipal Transit Center. We're looking at simultaneous mass casualty events across the entire city. I grabbed the spectrum analyzer, watching harmonic frequency curves spike toward cascade trigger points at multiple locations. The pattern was accelerating. Each detonation fed electrical fluctuations back into the grid, amplifying resonance buildup at remaining installations. We were approaching a convergence point where dozens of sites would detonate simultaneously, creating citywide infrastructure collapse. Grid shutdown is our only option, I said, highlighting the cascade prediction model on my tablet. Complete municipal power cutoff, followed by systematic frequency modulation to disrupt harmonic resonance. It's the only way to prevent convergence cascade. How long for full shutdown? Jorik demanded. 45 minutes minimum with a full technical crew. Sable's voice crackled through the radio. Longer if the primary distribution center suffers cascade damage during the process. And it will, because it's got Mercury-class installations throughout the facility. 45 minutes of citywide blackout. Hospitals switching to emergency power, traffic control systems dead, life support equipment dependent on backup generators that weren't designed for extended operation. The cure would cause casualties, heart patients when hospital power fluctuated, traffic accidents at dead intersections, people trapped in disabled elevators. But without systematic intervention, the convergence cascade would trigger synchronized detonations at every remaining Mercury-class installation. Thousands dead, toxic vapor clouds covering the entire city, emergency response systems completely overwhelmed by simultaneous mass casualty events. The radio crackled with urgent transmission from ER7. Command, electrical resonance at Memorial Hospital critical. We're at maybe 8 minutes to cascade. 300 patients in affected wings, including ICU and surgical. Evacuating mobile patients now, but critical cases. Jesus, we can't move them without killing them. 300 patients. ICU machines keeping people alive, surgical procedures in progress, premature infants in incubators. Moving them during cascade threat risked killing them through medical interruption. Leaving them risked killing them through chemical vapor exposure and electrical fires. YAR 7, continue mobile patient evacuation. Jorik's voice was steady despite everything falling apart around us. ICU and surgical patients stay put. We're attempting emergency grid intervention. But I could see the frequency curve for Memorial Hospital on my analyzer. 8 minutes, maybe less. Not enough time for anything except watching 300 people die. My tablet chimed with encrypted message from Mareth. Orlin, found Webb's complete insurance documentation. Policy payouts are structured by casualty count. Higher death tolls generate exponentially larger payouts. He's not just profiting from the disasters, he's incentivized to maximize casualties. Insurance fraud designed around mass murder. Marcus Webb hadn't just engineered systematic vulnerability, he'd structured the profit mechanism to reward higher body counts. Every person killed in the cascade detonations generated revenue for MFM, with exponential payout increases for large casualty events. Jorik, we need to contact the Municipal Power Distribution Center immediately, I said. Emergency shutdown protocols need to start now if we're going to prevent convergence cascade. I've been trying to reach distribution command for 20 minutes. Jorik slammed his fist against the communications console. They're not responding to emergency override protocols. Either their communications are down or someone's actively blocking emergency response coordination. Sabotage. Webb had anticipated systematic intervention and arranged to disable our response capabilities. He'd probably placed corporate allies in key municipal positions, people who would delay or obstruct emergency protocols to ensure maximum casualty counts for insurance payouts. The communications console erupted with simultaneous emergency transmissions from multiple response teams. Cascade resonance was building toward critical levels at 12 additional locations across the city. We were approaching the convergence point where synchronized detonations would create complete infrastructure collapse. Get me Sable Morrison on emergency frequency, Jorik ordered. If she won't provide technical cooperation voluntarily, I'm declaring municipal emergency authority and compelling her assistance under Protocol 7. While the technician worked to establish contact, I analyzed the cascade propagation patterns spreading through the city's electrical grid. The harmonic resonance was following distribution network pathways, building towards simultaneous critical frequency at interconnected installation clusters. Webb had designed the Mercury-class deployment to maximize cascade potential, not just individual detonations, but systematic chain reactions across the entire municipal infrastructure. The radio speaker crackled with static, then Sable's voice came through tense and frightened. This is Morrison. I'm monitoring emergency frequencies. The situation is beyond anything we anticipated in risk assessment models. Morrison, this is Emergency Commander Henley, Jorik said. I'm invoking Municipal Emergency Authority Protocol 7. You are hereby compelled to provide technical assistance to prevent imminent threat to public safety. I need access codes for manual shutdown of the primary power distribution center. I don't have access codes, Sable's voice broke. Distribution command requires executive authorization from Marcus Webb. But Webb's gone, private jet at 6 a.m., destination unknown. And Carson's dead. Dead. Not hospitalized, dead. The convenient medical emergency was permanent. Corporate evacuation. Webb had triggered the Cascade series, then fled the city before emergency response could compel his cooperation. He'd probably taken key personnel with him, leaving MFM operations deliberately crippled to prevent systematic intervention. I grabbed the radio. Sable, Webb's gone, Carson's dead, and we've got maybe 5 minutes before Memorial Hospital Cascade kills 300 patients. I need alternative access to distribution shutdown, maintenance overrides, emergency protocols, anything. Physical access to the primary distribution facility, she said. Manual shutdown controls, but the building's full of Mercury-class fixtures. Whoever goes in there dies when the cascade triggers, I finished. How long for manual shutdown? 15 minutes if you know exactly what you're doing. Longer if. The radio cut to static as Memorial Hospital's emergency transmission broke through. Command, we're losing containment, resonance critical in 30 seconds. Then silence. Through the basement windows, I watched the medical district flash white. Memorial Hospital, the children's clinic, the psychiatric facility, simultaneous detonation in perfect synchronization. Chemical vapor clouds billowed up like mushroom clouds, toxic and dense. 300 patients. Gone. Christ, Jorik whispered, staring at the emergency display as every red marker in the medical district went dark. We lost 300 people to corporate murder. I said, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the spectrum analyzer. And if we don't get to that distribution center in the next 10 minutes, we'll lose thousands more. But before I could argue, the communications console erupted with overlapping emergency transmissions. Cascade sites across the remaining districts were approaching critical threshold. West Side Elementary in 6 minutes, Municipal Transit Center in 8, the airport in 12. Everything Webb had targeted, everything with maximum casualty potential. I'll go, I said. No. Jorik's voice was flat, final. You're the only one who understands the cascade analysis. I need you coordinating emergency response from here. Then who? We need someone with electrical knowledge who can. I'll go. I stared at him. Jorik, you don't have the technical background for distribution center shutdown procedures. Then Sable will guide me through it step by step. He was already grabbing his emergency kit, checking his radio frequency. You stay here and manage citywide response. Track the remaining cascade sites, coordinate whatever evacuations are still possible. The communications console exploded with overlapping emergency transmissions. Cascade sites across the city were approaching critical threshold simultaneously. Memorial Hospital, West Side Elementary, Municipal Transit Center, Riverside Office Complex. Every major installation cluster was minutes away from synchronized detonation. Sable's voice cut through the radio static. I need to tell you both something. The insurance policies, they're structured by casualty count and response type. Webb gets 50,000 per civilian death, but 200,000 per emergency responder killed in the line of duty. 200,000. Webb had designed the system to profit from heroism, to make rescue attempts financially beneficial. He's betting we'll try to save people, I said, understanding finally. Every cop, firefighter, paramedic who dies trying to help generates 4 times the revenue of civilian casualties. The radio crackled with transmission from ER-12, their voices tight with fear. Command, we're detecting resonance at West Side Elementary. 400 kids still in the building. Evacuation proceeding, but we won't make it in time. Requesting, static cut them off. 400 children. Elementary school age, maybe 6 to 11 years old. I could picture them in my mind, confused, frightened, following their teachers toward exits that would never be reached in time. Jorik was already moving toward the basement exit. Sable, I need you on emergency frequency the entire time. Talk me through every step of the shutdown procedure. Orlin, track the remaining cascade sites and coordinate whatever response is still possible. I wanted to stop him, to argue that I should be the one taking the suicide mission, but we were out of time for debate. Someone had to reach the distribution center, and someone had to coordinate emergency response for the remaining cascade sites. Jorik, I started. Don't, he said, checking his radio one final time. Just make sure this isn't all for nothing. Make sure someone survives to testify about what Webb did to this city. He pushed through the exit door into air thick with mercury vapor and the chemical stench of burning fluorescent fixtures. Through the basement windows, I watched him disappear into the toxic haze that had replaced our city's atmosphere. The radio crackled with Sable's voice. Orlin, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not fighting harder against Webb's installation program. For approving systems I knew were dangerous. Save the apologies, I replied, turning back to the spectrum analyzer display showing cascade sites across the remaining districts. Help me coordinate evacuations while Jorik tries to save what's left of this city. But we both knew the truth. Webb had designed the system too well. Every choice we made, every heroic attempt to save lives, generated more revenue for corporate murderers who viewed human death as profit margin. Outside, through the mercury-poisoned air, Jorik was racing against time to reach a distribution center that would probably kill him. And I was coordinating emergency response for a city that was dying in perfect synchronization, exactly as Marcus Webb had planned. The silence after Memorial Hospital's cascade stretched exactly 47 seconds. I counted each one on the emergency chronometer while staring at 300 red markers that had just gone permanently dark on the response display. Through the basement security monitors, I watched toxic vapor clouds billowing from the medical district like industrial smokestacks. The chemical haze was so thick it blocked the late morning sun, casting the entire eastern quadrant into mercury-poisoned twilight. My throat burned with each breath as contaminated air cycled through our failing ventilation system, the metallic taste growing stronger with every cascade wave that rolled through the city. 17 sites showing critical resonance buildup, I announced, my voice cracking as I fought through the chemical burn in my lungs. Westside Elementary in 8 minutes, Municipal Transit in 12, the airport in 15. We're looking at simultaneous mass casualty events across every remaining district. Jorik stood frozen at the communications console, staring at the cascade prediction display on my tablet. The harmonic frequency curves were spiking toward trigger thresholds at multiple locations, each detonation feeding electrical fluctuations back into the grid, amplifying resonance buildup at remaining installations. We were approaching convergence cascade, the point where dozens of sites would detonate simultaneously, creating citywide infrastructure collapse. Grid shutdown, I said, highlighting the only viable intervention path. Complete municipal power cutoff, followed by systematic frequency modulation to disrupt harmonic resonance. It's our only chance to prevent convergence. How long? Jorik's voice was steady despite everything falling apart around us. 45 minutes minimum with full technical crew access to the primary distribution center, I replied. Longer if we hit complications, and we will, because the distribution facility itself is loaded with Mercury-class installations that'll cascade during the shutdown process. 45 minutes of citywide blackout. Hospitals switching to emergency backup power that wasn't designed for extended operation. Traffic control systems dead, creating intersection chaos. Life support equipment dependent on generators that would fail without proper municipal power cycling. People trapped in disabled elevators, subway trains dead on tracks between stations. But without systematic intervention, the convergence cascade would trigger synchronized detonations at every remaining Mercury-class installation. The mathematical models were clear. Thousands dead from immediate chemical exposure, toxic vapor clouds covering the entire metropolitan area, emergency response systems completely overwhelmed by simultaneous mass casualty events across dozens of locations. The radio erupted with urgent transmission from ER7. Command, electrical resonance at Westside Elementary approaching critical threshold, maybe 6 minutes to cascade. 400 students still in building. Mobile evacuation proceeding, but the younger kids, Christ, the kindergartners don't understand why they need to run. 400 children, ages 5 to 11, following confused teachers toward exits they'd never reach in time. I could picture their faces, scared, crying, wondering why the lights kept flickering, and why the air smelled like the chemistry set in the science room. My tablet chimed with encrypted message from Mareth. Found Webb's complete insurance documentation. Payout structure scales exponentially with casualty count. He's not just profiting from accidents, he designed the system to maximize death tolls for revenue generation. Insurance fraud engineered around mass murder. Marcus Webb hadn't just created systematic vulnerability through defective Mercury-class installations. He'd structured the profit mechanism to reward higher body counts. Every person killed in cascade detonations generated revenue for MFM, with exponential payout increases for large casualty events. I've been trying to reach distribution command for 30 minutes, Jorik said, his fist clenched against the dead communications console. They're not responding to emergency override protocols. Either their equipment failed or someone's actively blocking municipal response coordination. Sabotage. Webb had anticipated systematic intervention and positioned corporate allies to disable our emergency capabilities. Key municipal positions filled with people who would delay or obstruct emergency protocols, ensuring maximum casualty counts for insurance optimization. Get me Sable Morrison, Jorik ordered the communications technician. If she won't provide voluntary cooperation, I'm declaring municipal emergency authority and compelling her assistance under Protocol 7. While the technician worked to establish contact, I analyzed cascade propagation through the city's electrical grid. The harmonic resonance was following distribution network pathways, building towards simultaneous critical frequency at interconnected installation clusters. Webb had designed Mercury-class deployment to maximize cascade potential, not isolated detonations, but systematic chain reactions across municipal infrastructure. Sable's voice crackled through radio static. This is Morrison. I'm monitoring emergency frequencies. The cascade pattern is beyond anything we modeled in risk assessment scenarios. Morrison, this is Emergency Commander Henley, Jorik said formally. I'm invoking Municipal Emergency Authority Protocol 7. You are compelled to provide technical assistance to prevent imminent public safety threat. I need executive access codes for emergency shutdown at the primary distribution facility. I don't have access codes, Sable's voice broke with fear and frustration. Distribution Command requires executive authorization from Marcus Webb for emergency shutdown protocols. But Webb's gone, private jet departed at 6 a.m., destination classified. And Carson's in intensive care, medically unavailable for authorization. Corporate evacuation. Webb had triggered the cascade sequence, then fled before emergency response could compel his cooperation. He'd probably evacuated key technical personnel, deliberately crippling MFM operations to prevent systematic intervention while maximizing casualty counts for insurance revenue. I grabbed the radio transmitter. Sable, Webb's evacuated, Carson's unavailable, and we've got 4 minutes before Westside Elementary cascade kills 400 children. I need alternative access to distribution shutdown, maintenance overrides, manual controls, anything. Physical access to the primary distribution facility, she replied. Manual shutdown controls bypass executive authorization, but the building's filled with Mercury-class fixtures throughout. Whoever attempts manual shutdown dies when the facility cascades during the process. I finished. How long for complete manual shutdown? 15 minutes if executed perfectly by someone with advanced electrical systems knowledge. Longer if there are complications or unfamiliarity with industrial power distribution protocols. The radio erupted with overlapping emergency transmissions from cascade sites approaching critical threshold. Westside Elementary in 4 minutes. Municipal Transit Center in 7. The airport in 10. Every major population center Webb had targeted for maximum casualty optimization. I'll go, I said. No. Jorik's voice was flat, final. You're the only one who understands cascade analysis and frequency modulation. I need you coordinating emergency response and tracking remaining sites. Then who? Manual shutdown requires advanced electrical systems knowledge. Sable guides me through radio transmission, step by step, he said, already grabbing his emergency kit. You coordinate citywide response from here. Monitor remaining cascade sites. Direct whatever evacuations are still possible. Before I could argue, Sable's voice cut through radio static with devastating revelation. I need to tell you both something about Webb's insurance structure. Standard policies pay $50,000 per civilian casualty, but emergency responder deaths generate $200,000 each. He designed the system to profit from heroism. Every cop, firefighter, paramedic killed trying to save people generates 4 times normal revenue. $200,000. Webb had financially incentivized rescue attempts, making heroic sacrifice profitable for corporate murderers. He's betting we'll try to save people, I realized. Every emergency responder who dies generates premium payouts for MFM insurance policies. The radio crackled with transmission from ER-12. Command, detecting critical resonance at Municipal Transit Center, rush hour crowds trapped on subway platforms. Evacuation impossible with disabled trains. Estimating 1,200 civilians in affected tunnels, no viable escape routes. 1,200 people trapped underground. Commuters who descended into subway tunnels expecting normal morning transit, now confined in spaces that would fill with toxic vapor and glass debris when Mercury-class installations cascaded. Jorik was already moving toward the exit. Sable, I need continuous radio contact during manual shutdown. Talk me through every procedure. Orlin, track remaining cascade sites and coordinate response operations. I wanted to stop him, to argue that I should take the suicide mission since I had superior technical knowledge, but emergency transmissions were overlapping on every frequency. Someone had to attempt distribution center shutdown, and someone had to coordinate response for remaining cascade sites across the city. Jorik, wait, I called as he reached the exit door. He turned back, his face grim but resolved. Make sure someone survives to testify about what Webb did. Make sure this isn't all for nothing. He pushed through the exit into air thick with mercury vapor and the acrid stench of burning phosphor compounds. Through the basement windows, I watched him disappear into toxic haze that had replaced our city's atmosphere. The radio crackled with Sable's voice. Orlin, I need to apologize for everything. For not fighting harder against Webb's installation program, for approving systems I knew were dangerous, for prioritizing corporate loyalty over public safety. Save the guilt for later, I replied, turning back to the spectrum analyzer showing cascade sites across remaining districts. Help me coordinate evacuations while Jorik attempts to save whatever's left of this city. But we both understood the mathematical truth. Webb had engineered the system too precisely. Every choice we made, every heroic attempt to preserve life, generated revenue for corporate murderers who viewed human death as optimized profit margin. The emergency display showed 13 sites still approaching cascade threshold. Residential complexes, shopping centers, transit hubs, each representing hundreds or thousands of potential casualties. Even if Jorik succeeded in manual shutdown, even if we prevented convergence cascade, the damage was already catastrophic. The city's infrastructure was crippled, emergency response systems overwhelmed, thousands already dead or dying from mercury vapor exposure. And somewhere beyond our poisoned atmosphere, Marcus Webb was calculating insurance payouts from a private jet, counting profits generated by systematic mass murder disguised as technological failure. Through the toxic haze outside, Jorik was racing against harmonic frequency curves toward a distribution facility that would probably kill him. And I was coordinating emergency response for a city dying in perfect synchronization, exactly as corporate murderers had planned for maximum revenue optimization. The worst part wasn't the dying. It was knowing that our desperate attempts to save lives were generating profits for the people who'd engineered our city's destruction. The distribution facility's manual shutdown took exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds. I tracked every moment on the emergency chronometer while Jorik's voice crackled through increasingly distorted radio transmissions, Sable guiding him through each step of the systematic power grid isolation. Primary circuit bank isolated. His voice reported at minute 7. Interrupted by harsh coughing from mercury vapor exposure. Moving to secondary distribution controls. The air in here. Jesus, it's like breathing molten copper. Through the basement security monitors, I watched toxic clouds slowly dissipate as the citywide blackout eliminated electrical current that had been feeding cascade resonance. Emergency backup generators hummed to life across critical facilities, hospitals, emergency services, traffic control. Their independent power systems finally stable without grid-wide harmonic interference. But the damage was staggering. 43 Mercury-class cascade sites had detonated before the shutdown, including West Side Elementary, Municipal Transit Center, and Memorial Hospital. Initial casualty reports were climbing past 2,000 dead, with mercury vapor exposure affecting tens of thousands more. The city's infrastructure was crippled, emergency response systems stretched beyond capacity, and toxic contamination would require months of environmental remediation. Shutdown complete, Jorik's voice announced at minute 14. All distribution circuits isolated, grid resonance eliminated. The cascade prediction models on my tablet showed flat lines for the first time in 8 hours. No more synchronized detonations. No more harmonic frequency buildup. The systematic chain reaction that Marcus Webb had engineered to maximize casualty counts was finally broken. But victory felt hollow when measured against the cost. The emergency display showed 13 hospital facilities operating on backup power, their critical patients dependent on generators never designed for extended operation. Traffic control systems remained offline, creating intersection chaos as manual signal operation couldn't handle metropolitan volume. Subway systems were completely disabled, with thousands of commuters trapped in tunnels between stations. Jorik, what's your status? I transmitted, hearing only static in response. Sable's voice came through a different frequency. Orlin, I'm reading severe electrical burns and probable mercury poisoning at the distribution facility. Jorik needs immediate medical evacuation, but emergency response is overwhelmed with cascade casualties. The hero who'd saved the city was dying from toxic exposure, while ambulances were buried under mass casualty incidents across dozens of locations. Even our successful intervention carried the brutal cost Webb had engineered into his profit optimization system. Over the next 3 hours, as backup power systems strained to maintain critical operations, I coordinated systematic evacuation and medical response for remaining cascade sites. Emergency crews worked through toxic vapor clouds, their protective equipment barely adequate for the chemical contamination levels Webb's detonations had released into our atmosphere. By afternoon, Casualty reports stabilized at 2,847 confirmed dead, with another 18,000 requiring medical treatment for mercury vapor exposure. The city's hospital systems were completely overwhelmed, forcing medical triage decisions about who received life-saving treatment and who waited for resources that might never arrive. Jorek survived, barely, after 6 hours in intensive care treating electrical burns and mercury poisoning. Sable provided continuous technical assistance during the recovery phase, helping restore power grid functionality through systematic frequency modulation that prevented residual cascade risk. But Webb was gone. Private jet records showed his aircraft had crossed international boundaries before the first emergency responders reached cascade sites. Corporate lawyers issued statements denying MFM responsibility for the unprecedented technological failure, claiming the synchronized detonations resulted from unforeseeable harmonic resonance phenomena beyond current engineering capabilities. The insurance payouts were staggering. Over $2 billion in casualty compensation, infrastructure damage claims, and emergency response costs, all flowing through policies Webb had structured to generate maximum corporate revenue from engineered mass murder. MFM's insurance subsidiary reported record quarterly profits while our city struggled with environmental remediation and recovery operations. 3 weeks later, I testified before the Municipal Safety Commission about Webb's engineering conspiracy, presenting detailed technical evidence of deliberate cascade design and profit optimization through casualty maximization. My testimony was comprehensive, documented, and devastating, proving beyond doubt that corporate executives had engineered systematic mass murder disguised as technological failure. The Commission's response was entirely predictable: a formal censure of MFM's inadequate safety protocols, followed by new regulations requiring enhanced oversight of electrical installations in municipal facilities. The regulations were reasonable, comprehensive, and utterly meaningless. They addressed symptoms while ignoring the corporate profit structures that had incentivized mass murder. Marcus Webb remained internationally fugitive, protected by countries that didn't extradite for corporate homicide charges. MFM reorganized under different corporate names, with the same executive structure and profit optimization strategies intact. The insurance subsidiary that had paid cascade casualty claims quietly transferred assets to offshore accounts, beyond reach of civil litigation or criminal asset forfeiture. 6 months after the Cascade disaster, new Mercury-class lighting installations began appearing in municipal facilities across neighboring cities, marketed through subsidiary corporations but engineered with identical harmonic vulnerability characteristics. Webb's profit optimization system was expanding methodically, targeting fresh population centers for systematic casualty generation. I lost my position as Senior Electrical Safety Inspector, officially due to departmental restructuring, actually because my testimony had created political embarrassment for municipal officials who'd approved MFM installations without adequate safety analysis. Sable faced similar corporate retaliation, transferred to a meaningless administrative role after her cooperation with emergency response efforts. Maretha's vindication earned her a consulting position with safety advocacy groups that possessed no authority to prevent future installations. The city rebuilt its infrastructure with enhanced safety protocols and improved emergency response capabilities. New lighting systems met strengthened electrical standards, emergency communication networks included redundant backup systems, and medical facilities expanded capacity for chemical exposure treatment. But the fundamental corporate profit structures that had incentivized Webb's mass murder remained untouched. Insurance policies continued rewarding higher casualty counts through exponential payout scaling. Municipal contracting processes still prioritized cost efficiency over comprehensive safety analysis. Corporate executives retained legal immunity from criminal charges related to unforeseeable technological failures. Late at night, alone in my apartment, I analyzed frequency resonance patterns in electrical systems across metropolitan areas, tracking installations that matched Webb's cascade engineering signatures. The mathematical models were clear. Similar harmonic vulnerabilities existed in dozens of cities, engineered by corporate subsidiaries using identical profit optimization strategies. We'd stopped one convergence cascade through heroic sacrifice and systematic intervention. We'd saved whatever remained of our city after Webb's corporate murder campaign. But the system that had enabled his mass profit generation through engineered casualty events remained completely intact, expanding to new population centers where different executives could implement identical strategies for systematic revenue optimization. The Cascade disaster had generated exactly the outcome Webb intended: maximum casualty counts converted to corporate profits, with heroic emergency response generating premium insurance payouts, while systematic vulnerabilities spread to new markets for future profit optimization. Our success in preventing total infrastructure collapse was real. Thousands of lives preserved through desperate intervention and personal sacrifice. But the corporate machinery of systematic mass murder continued operating, protected by legal structures that treated engineered casualties as unforeseeable technological failures, rather than deliberate homicide for profit maximization. Every night I fell asleep to the taste of mercury vapor and the sound of Jorik's voice counting down manual shutdown procedures through radio static, knowing we'd won a single battle while the war for corporate accountability remained systematically unwinnable. The system was working exactly as designed. That was the most horrifying realization of all.